Hi guys, I hope you're doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies old and new. So today we are talking about and reviewing the newly released radio silence film, Abigail. After a group of would-be criminals kidnap the 12-year-old ballerina daughter of a powerful underworld figure, all they have to do to collect a $50 million ransom is watch the girl overnight. In an isolated mansion, the captors start to dwindle one by one, and they discover to their mounting horror that they're locked inside with no normal little girl. So this review is going to be completely spoiler-free, so if you haven't seen the film yet, or you're on the fence as to whether you should go see it or not, then it is absolutely fine to watch this review. I'm going to be covering it in positives and I'm going to be breaking the episode down into positives and negatives because while this is a good film that I had fun with, there are some negative elements to it in my opinion, so that is how we are going to break down this episode. So Abigail is made by the Radio Silence team who previously brought us Ready or Not and Scream 5 and 6. This is a remake of the 1936 film Dracula's Daughter, which is a direct sequel to the 1931 Dracula. However, I would make it very clear that this is a very loose remake of Dracula's Daughter. I have seen that film and Abigail has absolutely nothing to do with that film. However, it is still a brand new vampire film for us and we just don't get enough of these days, and I could not be happier that Universal Monsters are having another moment. They're having a resurge of popularity. I love the Universal Monster movies, so this was an exciting concept. Kicking off straight into positives, there's no reason to beat about the bush. The first positive I have to say is that with Radio Silence as the creative team behind the film, you know what you're going to get, and that for the most part is quality. Radio Silence create good films. They create a film that is the best that they can do, and they all have a distinct style and feel to them, and Abigail is no different. It, from the moment it begins, just feels like a Radio Silence film in terms of aesthetic, in terms of style, in terms of just the whole vibe of it. And like I said, they always provide a really good quality in what they create. I would also say that Abigail is an important film to go and see at the cinema and support. Compared to any other film this year, Abigail is the one that has been lighting up my Letterboxd account of people going on opening weekend. And I think that that is wonderful because Radio Silence are also a creative team who support their actors. And obviously everything that has happened to Melissa Barrero in terms of Scream is sad, disgusting, wrong, just all those kinds of things. But it's interesting to see that Abigail has become the #1 film in its opening weekend. I just think it's wonderful that people have gone to support the film, to support Melissa Barrero, to support Radio Silence as actors and a creative team. So it's been, a really good success story for them so far. But as we have mentioned Melissa Barrero, let's talk about another positive, and that is the actors in this film. You have some incredible actors and some incredible performances. We have horror staples of Melissa Barrero, who is wonderful in this film, and Catherine Newton. I mean, that girl has got 2 really solid horror films out this year, and she is a real standout in this film. Another huge standout in this film is Abigail herself, played by Alicia Weir, who previously played Matilda in the filmed version of Matilda the musical. So she's very much from a theatrical background. You can see that with the dancing, with the whole movement of her body, her delivery. She has to cover quite a variety of emotions and states in this film, and she's absolutely incredible. Another highlight for me was Dan Stevens, who I first saw as, what's his name from Downton Abbey? Matthew Crawley, I think, and it's very proper and prim, and in the 1910s, like pip pip what water, and then you've got him in this film, you could not get more polar opposite, and he's so fun to watch. He has some of the best lines in this. His character is one of the most interesting and dynamic to watch in terms of the journey that they go on. Angus Cloud as well was really good. I don't know the guy who plays Muscles. He's called Kevin Durant. He was really good. And along with Dan Stevens, he had some of the best lines in the film that actually got a laugh from me. I don't generally love comedy horrors. There are a few that I really do enjoy, and this one did get a few chuckles from me, mostly from Dan Stevens and Kevin Durant's line delivery. Another major positive for me with this film, and I am going to talk about, it's not a spoiler, but it's the very opening of the film. So the visuals at the very beginning are following as Abigail is dancing to Swan Lake, to the Swan Lake suite. And the use of light and shadow and the font of the opening text and title card is so beautiful. And to me personally, the Swan Lake Suite is some of the most beautiful music in the world. It's so emotive and so powerful. But I also love it because Swan Lake is the music that opens the 1931 Dracula film. So that really made me smile, that it seemed like a conscious nod to that film. But then as I was watching Abigail dance, I was thinking about Swan Lake and how you have Odette, the white swan, but then you had the black swan as well. They're kind of the light and the dark, the shadows of each other. And I just thought it was such an interesting foreshadowing of Abigail. Because I'd seen the trailer, I already knew that this was a vampire film. I was just trying to think if that was a spoiler. I think at this point most people do know that it's a Universal monster film, but I just thought that was a wonderful little bit of foreshadowing about the character of Abigail. So just the detail and attention that went into this opening scene alone. And the beginning of the film is another positive for me because you have the setup of this being a heist, and so Abigail is the target, we meet her, but then there's all the different members of the team. You have the hacker, the wheelman, you have the medic, you have the leader, you have the muscles, and they're all coming together to do this heist. And that setup of meeting, getting Abigail, and then getting to the next location is one of the most interesting parts for me personally, because it's really dynamic, it moves at a really good pace, we're getting to know the characters of the film. You could say that there are slasher elements within this film. There's definitely a murder mystery element to it. There's a little nod to And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, so it's kind of a similar concept. And for me, generally, I find slashers quite boring towards the back end. You often have characters, especially in the films from the 80s, characters who are not as interesting, who are there sort of to just be cannon fodder. And that's not the case in Abigail. Each character plays a very specific role within the film. Each one is completely different to the last and to the next. And so it's a really cool concept to have all these characters in this one place, in this one scenario, but because they're so different from each other, you get such a variety of ways to deal with it and ways to react to it. However, for this point, that is going to turn into a negative, and I will get into that when we do cover negatives. Another positive for me was both the look of the film and the setting of the film. Now, for me, radio silence films all have a similar look to them. They all have that sort of warm honey tone to them, or they're highly contrasted. The darks are really dark, the lights are really light. So that was really nice to have this sort of yellowy orange tone to it that we've seen a lot in Ready or Not. But the setting of it as well, the location where they're holding Abigail is this beautiful old house that is full of really old and antique things. They have this beautiful library room within it that has a chance to really work with light and shadows, but just the flooring on it, the shelving surrounding it, all the little details. It's such a beautiful place, such a lovely location. You have a room where there is this giant pool table, and so the characters are able to have a conversation around this pool table, but it just never quite crosses over into the gothic feel of previous Universal monster movies. And while that's not a failing on the film, it is something that I would personally have liked to see because of the house that they chose. They had the potential to tap into that, but it's too modern and it's too actiony to ever really cross into the gothic side of things. But that's a personal thing, that's not a movie thing. The gore and special effects in this film are incredible, absolutely incredible. The special effects are wonderful, in particularly with a kill that is quite early on in the film. It's just so well done, and if you are wanting something a bit more gory and visceral, then this is certainly a film for you. There is so much blood in this film, so much blood, and not necessarily just through kills, but just, I guess if you know Radio Silence, if you know Ready or Not or Scream 6, you probably can picture what I mean when I say so much blood. But yeah, special effects, absolutely fantastic. Was I really surprised by any of it? No. I kind of had my own little mental tick sheet of what kind of kills I thought there would be, and for the most part, they were ones that I had thought of. There was probably one element to the gore and the blood that did take me by surprise. It was a pleasant surprise. But other than that, I was like, yeah, it's a vampire film, so we're going to have this, and this. For the most part, the pace of this film is really good, but I'm not sure it needed to be the length that it was. The majority of the film moves at a pretty good speed. It develops the story along, but I am going to come back to the pace of the film in the negatives because it did dip off a bit. And another positive, which is also then going to feed into the negatives, is that in the beginning of the film, there is a really cool mystery element to it. This is definitely a mixed genre film. It is horror, but it has elements of mystery to it and it has elements of action to it. Very action-packed. But there is this cool mystery dynamic to it early on that in some aspect, in terms of the characters, like who are they? Why are they there? Are they who they say they are? Can they be trusted? All this kind of thing. There is a mystery element within it. But that again does turn into a negative. Okay, let's talk about a couple of negatives, which are not really anything major, but they're just positives that didn't remain positives and dipped off a little bit. And my main point that I want to talk about is probably the main reason why I logged this film as, I think I logged it as 3 or 3.5 stars on Letterboxd. I can't remember. I'll put it up here or here. But Radio Silence are a great creative team, and I stand by that. However, if you've seen Ready or Not, or Scream 5 or 6, then you've probably seen Abigail already. They do the best film that they can do, but they never really give us anything new. Like what they can do, they're great at, but they never really try a different direction. They never try and challenge themselves or step out of their comfort zone. And it's not something they have to do because there are creators and directors who have a distinct style that people want to see. And if that style works for them and they deliver on that, then great. I'm just saying for me, that what they create is exciting, and it would excite me to see them try something different. Another one I want to go back to is talking about the different types of characters and how initially it is a cool concept to have such a variety in personality. The problem is they lean so much on this that the characters end up becoming caricatures of themselves. So you have this whole thing of people being able to read people and read the room, and it's a cool concept in terms of telling the audience who people are. But once they've done it for the third time, it's now boring, and we've seen that done. And the characters, they have to cling so much to the role that they play. He's the wisecracker, he's the leader, he's the military guy, he's the wheel guy, he's the muscles, and they just have to stay so rigidly within the rules of this character that it just dips off a little bit towards the end. And that ties in quite nicely to my next point, which is the blood and the gore and the violence starts out really good. But by the end of it, it's like, oh, okay, so there's another big pile of blood. Oh, and look, there's some more blood, and that person's covered in even more blood now. And it sounds such a petty complaint, but the kills are so varied and, interesting, whether I predicted them or not. They're varied and interesting, and that's great. They're delivering on that, and the special effects are great. But by the end of it, I just become so desensitized to all the blood. I was now no longer really seeing it. I was like, oh yeah, look, there's more blood. Whereas the kills early on, as they were spaced out, they had more of an effect, I would say. In terms of runtime and the pacing, as I said earlier, the beginning of the film paced really well. But once we get to the ending of the film, it feels a little bit like Return of the King territory. Where you have just loads of false endings. You're like, well, this is the ending. Okay, we're done. Nope, there's another bit. Right, okay, now this is the ending. And oh, nope, there's another bit. And as varied and dramatic as Return of the King as in different settings. You are still within the same place, and not much has really happened. And so I feel like 10-15 minutes could be shaved off the end, or they could just, dilute it down just a little bit. These are minor negatives. I just want to make it clear that I have a lot of respect for Radio Silence and a lot of respect for a lot of the actors in this, Melissa Barrero, Dan Stevens, Catherine Newton, and this was a really, really fun time. I just feel like some of the positives in it became weaknesses, and this is a lot of what we've seen before. And in terms of my own personal preference of what I was looking for, things were just a little bit miss for me. But as I say, that's a me thing, not a film thing. In terms of checking it out, I would highly say support this, support Radio Silence, support Melissa Barrero. Do you have to see it on the big screen? Maybe not. If you can, then definitely do that. It is a fun time. This is definitely a popcorn horror. This is one you can have a good time with on the big screen, but I would never say go and spend money that you don't have. So if you are going to wait till it's rentable or buyable, then still check it out. I can imagine a lot of people really loving this one. In fact, on Letterboxd, I think so many people are giving it 4 and 5 stars, and I'm so happy for them that they loved it so much. And I'm so happy that it's been successful, that it's had such a strong opening weekend. Overall, Abigail is a good film, just not an overly original film. If you're looking for blood and fun, this is definitely one for you. If you're wanting something that's going to make you think a little bit, this one is probably not going to deliver on that. So that is my review on Abigail. As I said, most of it is my personal opinion. I'm sure you will have differing opinions, but if you do, or you just want to have a chat about this film, let me know in the comments down below. If you're new here and found me through this episode, then please do give the video a thumbs up, as it helps the channel and appeases the YouTube overlords. Also, if you would like extra content every week on top of the 2 episodes I usually do every week, and you want to join this list of lovely names, then there is a link to my Patreon page in the box down below. This week I'm doing a companion piece episode which is comparing the original Dracula's Daughter to Abigail, and we talk a little bit more about some spoiler content within Abigail. I just released my evolution of the slasher film, so if you would like to check that out, I will leave a link here or at the end of the episode. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.